Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to have you here today. We're about to dive into a fascinating topic: why you can't stop doomscrolling. This is the first of 10 slides, and in this presentation, we'll explore what makes this habit so powerful, why it's hard to break, and what you can do about it. So, let's get started. Imagine for a moment that your phone isn't just a device you use. It's more like a dopamine slot machine. Every time you swipe, scroll, or refresh, the algorithm is working behind the scenes to find that perfect hit of fear, outrage, or uncertainty. And it does this to keep you exactly where it wants you, glued to the screen. This phenomenon has a name: doomscrolling. And it's not just a harmless habit, it's a powerful, predictable behavior shaped by our brains. It impacts your mental health, your sleep, your stress levels, and even how you see the world. So, what exactly is doomscrolling? It's the compulsive consumption of negative or threatening online content, like news or social media posts about disasters, crises, conflicts, or trauma. We've seen this behavior spike during times of global stress, pandemics, wars, economic downturns, when people desperately crave information. Yet, ironically, each update often only fuels more anxiety and fear. Understanding doomscrolling helps us see how these habits develop and how they affect us. It's a reminder of how powerful social media algorithms are in shaping our emotional and mental state, sometimes without us even realizing it. Why we're wired for doomscrolling is actually rooted in evolution, not a moral failing or weakness. For thousands of years, our survival depended on our ability to detect threats quickly and respond accordingly. Ignoring danger could have meant death, so our brains evolved to be highly sensitive to negative information. This is what's known as the negativity bias, that we naturally pay more attention to bad news than good news. Now, when we combine this deep-seated wiring with modern features like 24/7 news cycles, which constantly bombard us with information, and the infinite scroll design that keeps us hooked without us realizing it, it creates a perfect storm. Add in fear-based algorithms that prioritize sensational content to keep us engaged, and suddenly, doomscrolling becomes not just easy, but almost unavoidable. So, what we're experiencing today is really a convergence of our ancient survival instincts with today's technology, making it incredibly tempting and addictive to keep scrolling through distressing news. And that's a key part of understanding why we find ourselves stuck in this cycle. So, on this slide, we're looking at how the tech industry exploits our natural instincts to keep us hooked. Platforms use very sophisticated behavioral psychology techniques to make sure we keep scrolling, clicking, and engaging longer than we might intend. Let's start with intermittent rewards. Think about those random hits of shocking news or viral stories. They trigger a burst of dopamine, that feel-good chemical, making us want to keep checking for more because unpredictability increases addiction. It's like gambling. You never know when the next hit will come, so you keep coming back. Next, there's fear-based content. Platforms often prioritize stories that involve conflict, disaster, or crisis. This kind of content taps into our instinct to stay informed and aware, even if it leaves us feeling anxious or overwhelmed. It creates a sense of urgency that makes us keep scrolling to find out what's happening next. Then we have the infinite scroll. This feature removes the natural stopping points we might have had, like closing a magazine or turning off the TV. Without any clear cue to stop, we lose track of time and just keep going. It's a clever way to extend our engagement without us realizing. Lastly, personalization plays a huge role. Algorithms analyze what we click on and what we fear most, then show us stories that match those fears. This creates reinforcing anxiety loops, making us more anxious and more likely to stay engaged because the content feels personally relevant and intense. And here's the key point: the scarier or more emotionally charged the content, the longer we tend to watch. That means more time on the platform, which translates directly into more revenue for them. So, it's not just about keeping us entertained. It's also about maximizing their profits by exploiting these ingrained psychological triggers. Let's take a closer look at the anxiety loop and how doomscrolling can really hook us. It starts with feeling anxious, right? So we search for information online to try and make sense of what's going on. That search provides us with a temporary sense of relief, at least for a moment. But then, what happens? More alarming news pops up, which ramps up our anxiety even further. We keep scrolling, hopping to find some reassurance, but instead, our anxiety just keeps increasing. Now, here's the key point. Your brain starts to believe that if you keep scrolling, you'll finally feel safe. But the reality is quite the opposite. The more you scroll, the less safe you actually feel. This creates a psychological trap called hypervigilance, where your mind is constantly scanning for danger, even when there's no real threat. So this loop keeps spinning, trapping us in a cycle of anxiety and reassurance seeking, which ultimately fuels more anxiety. Recognizing this pattern is crucial because it helps us understand why breaking out of doom scrolling can be so challenging, and why it's important to develop healthier habits to protect our mental well-being. Let's talk about the consequences of doom scrolling on your brain and body. In the short term, it causes an increase in cortisol, which is your stress hormone. This can make you feel anxious or overwhelmed. You might also find it harder to sleep properly, as your mind is constantly active and stressed. Additionally, it can reduce your focus and productivity, making it tougher to concentrate on tasks or goals. But the real concern comes with long-term effects. Over time, doom scrolling can contribute to anxiety disorders and depressive symptoms. It can even lead to learned helplessness, where you start feeling powerless to change your situation. It can shift your worldview to become more pessimistic, making you see threats and negativity everywhere. And here's the tricky part. Your brain begins to believe that the world is truly collapsing, even if your own life is actually stable. So, the cycle of stress and negativity just keeps reinforcing itself, impacting your overall mental health and how you perceive reality. That's why understanding these consequences helps us see why breaking the doom scrolling habit is so important for our well-being. Let's talk about how our personality and attachment styles really matter when it comes to doom scrolling. People with attachment anxiety or a fear of abandonment often find themselves compulsively checking news or social updates. They're seeking safety and reassurance, trying to feel more secure in uncertain times. On the other hand, those with avoidant attachment styles might scroll through feeds to emotionally detach or to avoid real-life stressors. What's important to recognize is that these emotional patterns influence how easily doom scrolling can become a coping mechanism. If someone's attachment style makes them more prone to anxiety or avoidance, they may be more likely to turn to scrolling as a way to manage their feelings. So, understanding these underlying personality traits helps us see why doom scrolling isn't just a bad habit. It's often rooted in deeper emotional needs. This connection underscores how our inner world shapes our online behaviors, especially in stressful or uncertain moments. Let's talk about what I like to call the illusion of control. We tend to scroll through news and updates because we believe that having knowledge gives us control over what's happening around us. But the truth is, especially with global crises, there's a disconnect, an awareness without real power. This creates a psychologically harmful imbalance. We learn about earthquakes, wars, tragedies, things that feel so distant yet impactful. The frustrating part is, no matter how much we know, there's often nothing we can do to stop these events from happening. And that sense of helplessness can actually make us feel worse, deepening the cycle of frustration and despair. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes our desire for control can backfire, especially when the world feels uncontrollable. All right, so now let's talk about how to break free from the digital trap without ignoring the world around us. The first step is setting boundaries with our digital environment. For example, try to avoid news or social media for at least an hour after waking up and also an hour before going to bed. Turning off push notifications is another simple but effective way to reduce constant interruptions. And instead of doom feeds or endless scrolling, replace those with curated sources that actually add value or positivity to your day. Next, we want to introduce friction. That means making it a little harder to get lost in your apps. Remove social media apps from your first home screen so they're not just staring at you. You can also use browser extensions that limit your feeds or time spent online, creating natural barriers that make mindless scrolling less automatic. Another useful strategy is creating a stop rule. Limit yourself to checking the news only twice a day and keep each session to around 10 minutes. This way, you regain control over how much information you consume and when. It's also important to rebalance your information diet. For every negative story you come across, intentionally seek out one positive article or engage in an uplifting activity. This helps maintain a healthier mindset and reduces the emotional toll of constant negativity. And finally, ask yourself a grounding question. Is scrolling helping me or hurting me right now? This simple check-in brings awareness to your behavior and disrupts autopilot habits. When you pause and reflect, you regain control and make more mindful choices about your digital consumption. So, these are practical ways to step back without disconnecting, and they help us stay grounded in a noisy world. So let's talk about the bottom line here. Doomscrolling isn't simply a sign of weakness or lack of willpower. Instead, it's rooted in some very deep evolutionary reasons. First, it's our survival instinct kicking in. Our brains are wired to focus on threats because, historically, staying alert to danger meant staying alive. Second, we're influenced by fear-optimizing algorithms. These are designed to grab our attention and keep us engaged, often by highlighting the most alarming news. Third, there's psychological vulnerability. When we're feeling uncertain or anxious, we tend to seek out information, even if it's distressing. And finally, modern uncertainty plays a big role. It's like our brains are overwhelmed by the constant flow of unpredictable events in today's world. Now, it's important to remember that cheerful content doesn't spread as quickly as fear. That's because fear has been a key factor in human survival for thousands of years, so our brains are naturally more attuned to it. But here's the good news. The threats we face today, like those on our phones, aren't like the saber-toothed tigers of the past. You actually have the power to turn off your screen and still be safe. Recognizing that helps us take back control and break free from that cycle of endless doom scrolling.